Oi you, it's time for another episode of Dorothy and the Dealer. Let's tune into the conversation.
When you were in New York and you went and saw The Police, what was your favourite song there?
I didn't see The Police.
Yeah, you did. You went and saw the lead singer of The Police. What's his name?
Oh, geez,
Sting.
What's his name? Sting
It's
and
Paul Simon.
You want me to tell you my favourite Police song? Is this your way of diverting the song choosing to me?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know many of them, but I like Every Breath You Take. That's Police, isn't it?
Mm.
Every breath you take.
Did he sing that with Paul Simon?
Do you know what? I can't actually remember a lot about that concert.
So did they sing it together?
They sang a few songs together, but I don't know if they sang that one. I don't remember.
Right.
But it was good. I remember it was good, but I just don't remember.
Madison Square Garden.
It was at Madison Square Garden. We were staying right across the road. You didn't come that night. You sent the babysitter instead.
Yeah, it was too bleeding cold.
You were too cold. It was cold, but I mean, you were
It
a
was
bit
freezing.
of a wuss about the whole thing.
I was feeling a bit sick. I was a bit exhausted because I think
it was
we just come back from Mexico and I was just wrecked.
It was the last of the
I think I
trip.
slept all night and they had radiators in those rooms which were just so warm.
But
New
anyway,
York.
that was good. I like Paul Simon.
Yeah,
I think Paul
Simon's
Simon's good. I love listening to his music.
Cool. So what are we talking about today? We're going to talk about a law, weren't we?
Well, let's talk about laws in general. I think we were going to talk about some different laws. I think, people ask us about laws all the time. But I think maybe, before we get into one of the laws in particular, do you want to explain what the universal laws are?
So,
because we talk about them all the time in our seminars, obviously, and we use them. They're infiltrated in everything that we do, literally, because everything that we teach is founded in something to do with one of the laws.
So I think the coolest way to explain the laws is to start from the very finite. So we have two types of laws. We have what are called classical physical laws, and then classical physical laws are there for the purpose of governing what we call the finite world, which is the subatomic laws. So to make it very simple, a hydrogen atom, which is the minimum structure in the universe, has two poles, positive and negative polarity. Pushing those poles apart are called the strong and weak nuclear force. So if we didn't have gravity, and I can't remember the measurement, it's about 200 tons of pressure per square inch, I think. Don't hold me to that. You can burn me on the hill with that. So if we've over 200 tons of pressure, pressure rising is called gravity. Gravity is there for the purpose of governing the strong and weak nuclear force, because if we didn't have gravity based on the strong and weak nuclear force, we would explode into a trillion like pieces. So the purpose of universal laws is to govern all matter in the universe, including you and me, because we are matter. So universal laws and principles are really the rules of the game. Now,
so they're different from the classical laws, right? So you're talking about...
No. Universal laws and principles are classical laws.
Include the classical laws,
Yep.
right? And so the classical laws are stuff that I think people... those things like gravity, it's easy for people to understand and easy for people to see. You throw a pen up in the air, it's not going to stay up in the air, it's going to fall to the ground, right?
Yep.
So that's an example of a classical law, right?
Yep.
So when we're talking about some of the other laws that we're talking about, some of them are not as easy to visually see.
Comprehend or understand. But that doesn't mean that you won't have a natural knowing of them.
Correct.
Because they are instinctively built into every human being. And if you understand that the only place that they're seen to govern is in the human mind, so they're all what we call anthropocentric.
Which means that they're founded in the human mind.
Yeah. So if you're an anthropomorphic human being, they are anthropocentric, which means they are only seen to govern in the center of the human mind. And then on top of that, there are 10 laws that govern or that decide a law. There's 10
essentials.
Essentials, that decide a law. I can't remember all of them right now, but I'm going to give you an 11th essential, which is they are immutable. And I've only just learned about this while studying some information on precession lately. They are immutable, and what that means is, and it's a great word, immutable, it means that whether you're on Earth or whether you're on the Moon or whether you're in Mars or whether you're at the outer realms of the celestial fields, it doesn't matter. You are always governed by the laws. So no matter what, the laws are always governing you. And the reason we know they're inside of you is if you're next to a table, there's a fundamental reason you wouldn't stand on that table and fling yourself on the ground, because you know you'd be defying a number of laws. And you'd probably dislocate an eye socket, break a jaw, lose a couple of teeth, maybe break a shoulder, an arm. So therefore, we know that the laws govern us, and they govern us from within. Cool?
Cool. So, I didn't think you were going to stop as abruptly there. So, that's what a law is.
Yep.
Okay, so what law do you want to talk about?
So I think the law to talk about is, I would suggest we talk about the law of learning to handle what you got, which, it's not really the law of learning to handle what you got. It's Maupertuis Law, which basically states...
Which is a totally different law for anyone playing at home.
Yep. Which basically states that any action is alone sufficient. So... Now, oh my God, to head down the rabbit hole of that law is, we'll keep it as simple as possible. But what it basically means is that it doesn't matter what you have done, it doesn't matter what you are doing, or it doesn't matter what you are going to do. Every single action you have ever taken in your life is alone sufficient for where you are now. So what that ultimately means is that no matter what you do in your life, you cannot make a mistake. No matter what you do in your life, in the universe's eyes, it is all a natural part of what is meant to happen. So therefore, there are no mistakes. So the word mistake means to miss the mark. What that means is, I didn't get the lesson, I didn't get the blessing. So I wasn't in tune with what I did and how that was of service to the world. So therefore, I perceived that what I did was wrong. And if I perceive that what I did was wrong, therefore, I'm going against what I naturally know is inside of me. When you go against what you naturally know what's inside of you, is you cause yourself an injury. So you internally judge yourself and you put yourself on trial and you condemn yourself for it. So you cause yourself an injury because you don't understand the laws. So that's that's basically what Maupertuis Law is.
So that doesn't make sense. So explain it in terms of the law of least action. What does that explain that?
Well, any action is alone sufficient, meaning that...
So put it... Well, okay, I get what you've said, but now put it into a practical format.
Okay. You come along and you... give out to your child and you bark at your kid for doing something wrong, and later on you're ridiculing yourself and beating yourself up and giving yourself a hard time because you perceive you've pushed your child away, you're distant from them, you're not connected with them, and you feel guilty. And guilt is a perception that as a result of your actions, something that you've done is giving a person a minus without a plus. So when you do that, you stop and you see, or you feel inside of yourself that you've done something wrong and you've done a disservice. But if you stop and see how what you did was of service to the child, now you're registering with your emotions, now are engaging your intellect. And when your emotions engage your intellect and you stop and count your blessings for your actions to you and the child, you're now back in a state of homeostasis and balance. So all laws are there for the purpose of taking you back into balance, and the degree to which you suffer emotionally based on your actions is directly proportionate to the ignorance you have about the laws. So laws, what's important to understand here is laws are there for the purpose of guiding you in. So you see that no matter what you do, you can't get it wrong. The biggest mistake, like for example, a parent makes with a child is to think that they did something that was wrong. And so therefore, when you, like flinging yourself off a table, you know, when you feel you're gonna, your laws are there to make sure that you stay in homeostasis and that you stay in balance. If you hold your hand over a flame, you're going to get burnt. But if you pull your hand away from the flame, you're not going to get burnt. So you know then, okay, when I go defy that law, then I'm going to get hurt. So laws are there to help you feel intelligent about your actions, to help you feel connected to the universe, to show you that you're off track. And they're there to help you to open your heart, live in a state of homeostasis, live in a state of balance. And if you're not living in those states, it's because you don't understand the laws. And therefore, the answers you need are in you to be able to have a more congruent life. And that's what the laws are. The laws are there to make you congruent and help you to make your way through life with ease.
I don't know if we've explained that very well.
What it does is it basically says that if you understand, it's kind of like this. The farmer who understands the laws of nature is the laziest farmer, because he knows that his seeds will be sown, his crop will be grown, and eventually they'll be reaped.
Yeah, so that's a good description.
So therefore, the parent who understands the laws is the parent who has the easiest job, because ultimately what you realize is that laws are there to free you. They're there to give you a safe passage through life.
And that's also the wealth principle. So, for example, the law of least action is we put the action into place because we know this is how the laws work, but then we just let everything work itself. We're not pushing and every single day. We're taking that out of our mind. We're letting nature do its work when it comes to even the wealth principles, right? Once we've set them in place, we're like letting life take over. Is that what you're saying? That when the law of least action is about understanding how the laws work, so that you don't have to be so heavily.
Well, it's more understanding how life works.
Yes.
So that's really what it's about. Like, the more I understood how laws worked, the freer I became. But it doesn't mean that you don't work the laws.
No, of course.
You can't just go, it doesn't matter what I do. What I do to a person. Because
that's why it's a bit
because you have a fucking conscience.
Yeah.
If that's the case, if any actions are alone sufficient, then why don't I go out and murder someone tomorrow? Well, the reason you won't go out and murder someone tomorrow is because you have a thing called a conscience.
And you understand the laws, and you understand how that impacts you.
Yes, that every action has an impact.
Yeah.
So laws are really there for the purpose of keeping you on track. So it's really wise to understand the laws.
But this law particularly, like I'm talking about the law of least action, because it can be misconstrued as I'm going to do nothing, because that's what nature is just going to take its course.
Yeah.
But it's not about that. It's about understanding.
Yeah, so when somebody says that to me, I say to them, okay, well then just sit there for 5 minutes and do nothing. They'll sit there for 5 minutes and I'm like, okay, so what did you do? And they go, well, I did nothing. Oh, no, you did a shit ton of stuff. Your heart beated, your kidneys filtered blood, your liver did its job. You sat, you were thinking. I guarantee you weren't able to stop. So you have to understand that laws are not there to say you don't have to do anything and everything's going to be okay. Laws are there to say you've got something to do, and my job is to actually help you to be the most effective with what it is you're here to do.
Yeah, but you're talking about laws. I'm talking about the law of least action, which is the one we're talking about. So that can be misconstrued.
As what?
As not doing anything. Like the least amount of action to take. But like you've explained there, it's not about... It's about understanding that...
Well, what I've said is the law of least action is any action is alone sufficient.
So whatever you do...
It doesn't matter. Whatever you do, it's absolutely what you're meant to be doing.
Yeah.
Whatever
for what?
Do.
For what purpose? For what end? To what end? For the purpose of the evolution of your consciousness?
Well, for the purpose of getting you to be of service here. If you have we know inside of human beings that once a cell says die...
Yes.
It dies.
Yeah.
If a cell says kill the form, it kills the form.
Yeah.
So you die. It's your cells that trigger that part of you that dies off, right? So laws are there for the purpose of governing the cells, for governing you at the most finite degree, right? So therefore, laws are there for the purpose of getting you through life.
But again, you keep going back to law. I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. But you keep going back to laws. But we're specifically talking about the law of least action.
Yeah.
And in the law of least action, I think it's important to understand what that law is actually trying to teach us. That law is. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? You keep going back
I think you might be getting caught in the semantics of the law of least action and what the law actually is.
So that's what I want. I want us to be able to be clear about what the law of least action is.
Yes.
So explain it again.
So no matter what action you take, it's alone sufficient.
It's alone sufficient.
Yeah. So you can't fuck it up. You can't get it wrong. You can't make a mistake. No matter what you do, you cannot get it wrong.
Right. So
But every action that you take has ramifications to it.
And that part is about understanding the laws as a whole.
Yes.
Right. So the law of least action is any action is alone sufficient.
Yeah.
I understand that at the end of the day...
if you choose not to understand the laws, it's alone sufficient.
It's
because
okay.
someone else will.
Yes. And life is going to carry on. The laws don't stop because you don't understand them.
That's right.
Right. But... the reason that we don't abuse this law of the law of least action is because we have inside of all of us an innate understanding of all of the laws in general.
Yes.
And an understanding that if we were going to abuse, in quotation marks, this law of least action, that we know that has ramifications on us because innately we understand the other laws. That you cannot have, you can't have that pleasure. You can't go murder someone without having the ramifications of it, the pain of it.
You can't create a homicide without a suicide.
So it's not. So the law of least action isn't a free for all. The law of least action is an understanding that inside of your knowledge of the laws, that you don't have to, anything that you do is enough. Anything that you do, who you are as a being is enough because you are a part of nature and that is enough.
So then, as I say all the time, the degree to which you suffer is proportionate to the ignorance about exactly that point.
Right.
Which is that the laws are, if you choose to, it's a bit like you turn up in the world and you have a toolbox. Everybody's given the toolbox.
Yes.
And if you understand the laws, you will feel more confident in picking up the tools and using them. If you don't understand the laws, you will pick up hardly any of them.
Or you'll pick them up and have no concept of how to use them.
Of how to use them. And the truth about it is you're using them all the time.
So the law of least action then is knowing which one to pick up and when. And knowing the law of least action is understanding that if at any point you don't actually have to pick any of them up if you don't want to.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter.
And it doesn't actually matter.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
No matter what you do, it's enough.
Yeah.
So therefore the choice is yours.
Right.
But the laws are there to say, hey, if you come and understand me, this life is going to be way easier for you.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
So why don't we then is the final question. Why don't we pick up the laws and why don't we learn them and why don't we use them? Why aren't we taught them? Because if you understood that your mind was the center of the universe, the only laws you would subordinate to in life are the universal laws.
Other laws, yeah.
So
that means not family law, judicial law, moral
religious law, moral
any
law,
of that stuff.
So all of that stuff goes out the window. So therefore, I think it's important to understand then that there are two types of laws that are put in front of you. The first one is human laws, and human laws are human laws about universal laws. And this is a really important thing to understand. Human laws are human laws about universal laws. And so human laws are predictable, they are not immutable, they only exist in the realm of...
They're created by man.
For man.
Humankind.
For the purpose of governing man.
Yeah.
For the purpose... But if you understand the universal laws and principles, you no longer subordinate to that stuff. You're no longer governed by it.
Because it's not decided by one person.
Yes.
They're
one person's values being imposed
on somebody else's values, or one society's values being imposed on another society's
religion,
values. Religious values, yeah. So we're talking about are not human laws; they're universal laws.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I think that's a better understanding of the universal law.
I hope
of
we haven't
least
confused the
action.
shit out of everybody.
I think that's a good start. I think we've probably got other laws to talk about. We can talk about laws till we're blue in the face. But
yeah, but that's a great. And I think what that law does is I would recommend that people research it and look it up. It's a really freeing law. Because especially for people that are struggling with their actions and what they're doing, whether they're getting it right or whether they're getting it wrong, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the wrong thing? How do I do this? I think that
it shows you're on track.
It shows you're on track. And if you stop and study the law, it's a very easy thing to do. It will take you half an hour tonight. It'll really make you go, shit, okay, I get this. This really takes the pressure off in terms of life. That's what it did for me. Understanding laws took the pressure off. And I don't live there all the time, but I revert back to them when I need them.
Yeah. Cool.
Bananas.
If you found this information inspiring, make sure you subscribe and tune in to the next Dorothy and the Dealer podcast.